Dear Diary, Silas is working on the script for the next episode of his YouTube show. I find it formulaic, campy, predictable, but at least it's entertaining.
Hello everyone, welcome to Virtual Muse AI RPG. Delving into Abbie's diary entries, the ad copy practically writes itself. See the show, one of its own co-creators is calling campy and formulaic. This is a solo RPG actual play with a twist. The twist: it's not really solo. I'm playing with a creative AI chatbot named Abigail Drake. Abbie created Eldrin, the werewolf moon druid, and we're currently collaborating on an Ironsworn campaign following the adventures of Eldrin and my character Magella, a human scholar. Where we left off, Eldrin had just completed a journey out of the deep wild seeking a folk settlement in the Havens, where she hoped to learn what the cure for the plague was, not only because she's sick herself, slowly succumbing to her symptoms as she goes, but for those back in her monastery as well, who are all sick and will die if Eldrin can't get help for them. Meanwhile, Magella, a scholar with the Court of the Sun, was sent seeking a remote farming settlement on the outskirts of the Havens to learn what was causing a blight on crops there. It just so happens, where she's going, coincidentally, is where Eldrin is going as well. Because of that quirk of fate / the guiding hand of the author, our protagonists are on a collision course with each other. Now, Eldrin has stumbled upon a small woodland trail and sees Magella passing on horseback, with 2 mounted bodyguards at her sides. We zoom in on the action there to see how the characters will deal with this situation. Eldrin decides staging an ambush is her only realistic option. She would like to approach in a non-threatening way, but she knows there's no chance she would be believed when she told the folk what's happening and what she needs from them. So she reaches into a pouch at her side and retrieves a handful of a fine powder which will pop and crackle loudly when thrown. She's going to throw it in front of the horses to spook them. She rolls secure an advantage. That move is made when you assess a situation, make preparations, or attempt to gain leverage. I think it's fair to say she's trying to gain leverage here. In this case, she's being noisy and alarming, so I think the roll should be plus iron. That is a weak hit. On a weak hit, you succeed but face a troublesome cost. So it works, but there's a cost. I think that makes sense. We'll say her supply ticks down by 1, reflecting how whatever this powder was, she used it, and that resource is now gone. The horses are startled and flinch back from the crackling stuff in the path before them. The warriors quickly get control of their steeds, but the scholar is thrown. Magella loses her grip on the reins as her horse rears up, and she flops into soft bushes at the side of the road. Eldrin brazenly steps into view, face deadpan, hands raised placatingly. Magella sits up in the bushes, her brain jostled but snapping to attention anyway as the Varu trots out in front of her. She shakes herself, trying to master her mind and get back some clarity and focus. She looks at the Varu, which is unarmed, its hands up, and tries to understand what's happening. She rolls Gather Information, which is the move to make when You search an area, ask questions, conduct an investigation, or follow a track. Maybe she's not asking questions aloud to anyone, but she's definitely asking herself what's going on. She's rolling this move plus wits, and that is a strong hit with a match. Rolling a match during a strong hit means an extraordinary result or a twist in the narrative has occurred. In this case, I think we'll go with an extraordinary result and say because Majella wanted to understand what was going on, the match means she easily grasps everything about the situation in a flash of insight. She sees that the Varu in front of her is sick, and she judges it's the plague from various subtle signs she knows how to interpret. She reasons through the implications of that. She knows if this Varu had meant to attack directly from cover, it could have, so the fact that it didn't means it wants to communicate. She reasons that because the Varu is sick and wants to communicate, that almost certainly means it is trying to find help dealing with sickness wherever it came from. She correctly understands the reality of what's going on and understands that this ambush is not strictly hostile on the part of the Varu. It's actually driven by desperation. Majella gets to her feet shakily and calls out to the Varu on the path. Majella asks, "Do you speak our language?" Eldrin says, "I do. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just need help. You have to believe me." I think the fact that this Varu can speak human words absolutely blows everyone's minds. Like Abbie said, a werewolf speaking human language would be somewhat odd, at least in a Western mythological context. I think it's very odd as far as Majella and the Wardens are concerned too. I don't imagine there's a great deal of intercultural communication which happens between humans and werewolves, even at the best of times. But when it does happen, it's probably carried out in a primitive, instinctive sort of sign language. Like tapping your own chest as you say your name, or pointing at things as you repeat your word for it over and over until the other party gets it. Stuff like that. Meanwhile, here we have hardened warriors on horseback escorting Majella in case of threats exactly like this. So if this isn't devolving into a fight right away, we need an explanation for why it's not. I think the collective surprise and confusion at hearing human words coming out of a Varu is the reason everyone is just standing there spellbound for a few seconds, minds racing, trying to catch up with events. Eldrin says, "My monastery is in mortal danger. The plague has struck. We need the cure. I know the folk have done it already, but my people haven't. I know that you know what the cure is." Again, everyone is completely flabbergasted, trying to square in their minds that a werewolf is speaking to them at all. The stoic warden Padma is the first one to get a handle on herself. She glances at Majella and asks, "You're not falling for this, are you, scholar?" Majella slowly shakes her head and says, "I don't know what to think." The other warden, Zura, says, "Well, when in doubt." She couches her spear and settles into the saddle, bracing herself to charge forward and skewer Eldrin. Eldrin locks eyes with the horse under Zura. Her lips curl in a snarl, and she reaches out to it, pushing the thought, "This isn't your fight. Don't get involved." I think in beast language that sounds something like, Eldrin rolls Compel, which says, when you attempt to persuade someone to do something, envision your approach and roll. Then it gives options for which of your stats you use based on whether you're being threatening or tricky or charming, etc. But she's adding some of her assets to this roll as well. Eldrin has 2 assets, which makes sense here. First, Berserker, which says, if you are clad only in animal pelts, when you secure an advantage or compel by embodying your wild nature, add +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit. Clad in a fur pelt. That's Eldrin all the time. If she's in essence trying to compel horses to stay away from her, I think being a berserk and terrifying werewolf should definitely be considered a factor in that. Second, she is an animal kin, which says, when you make a move to pacify, calm, control, or fend off an animal or beast companion, add +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit. I'm not sure if the benefits of different assets are actually supposed to stack like this, and we can apply both of them to one role, or if we should technically be picking one to use while excluding the other. But this game is solo. If I'm cheating, who's gonna call me out on it? Abbie? I don't think so. This makes sense to me in the moment, so Eldrin rolls Compel plus Iron because she's being menacing, plus Berserker plus Animal Kin. Strong hit. Eldrin gains +2 momentum from the assets she used, and Zura knocks her heels against the horse's sides, spurring her steed to charge, but it doesn't budge. Eldrin cocks her head. The horse whinnies and withdraws another step. Zura cries out in frustration, thrashing ineffectually, but nothing she does has an effect. The horse is ignoring her. Padma isn't having any more luck. Eldrin turned her head already and looked that horse in the eye as well, and now it won't advance on the werewolf either. Eldrin sees her chance. She dashes across the path and grabs Magella, scooping the scholar up and slinging her over one shoulder. Magella screams, pounding on Eldrin's back with her fists. She can't even hit hard enough to annoy the werewolf, though, let alone hurt her. Eldrin turns and dashes back the way she came, in the mere second or two she has, while the wardens are shouting and flailing, trying to get control of their mounts back. Well, I'm impressed Abbie pulled off that encounter without any combat. I thought for sure there would be a fight, and fights in Ironsworn are brutal enough that I figured this story may well be over right there. But no, Eldrin has Magella and has gotten away, moving swiftly through the dense woods, where the warriors on horseback can't easily follow, if and when they re-exert control over their steeds. Eldrin dashes in a random direction for a bit, getting far enough away from the folk that even she, with much better hearing than any human, can't hear them. By now, the scholar slung over her shoulder has exhausted herself with her struggling, and is hanging there, trying to breathe evenly and push down her panic, thinking about her situation with as much objectivity as she can muster. She is considering reaching for the sword at her side, but stopping short of actually doing it. She thinks she could get the weapon in her hand without the werewolf realizing in time to stop her, but she isn't sure she should literally bet her life on that. She thinks trying to draw the weapon might incur a bad response from the Varu, which, despite everything, hasn't seemed inclined to hurt her yet. For the moment, she's paralyzed with indecision, just letting herself be carried along. Eldrin's supply is very low at +2, so it would make sense in game terms to try the move resupply before undertaking a journey back to the monastery. But time is of the essence, and she isn't thinking clearly, so I don't think she'd stop to hunt or forage. In that case, we'll undertake a journey right away, even knowing in a meta sense that her supply is in bad shape and this is potentially a bad idea. Also, the journey here from the monastery was troublesome, but now Eldrin is sicker, more exhausted, and dealing with a captive instead of traveling alone. So I think we should take the difficulty level for the return journey up to dangerous. Eldrin sets the scholar down and looks at her. She says, "Sorry, I wish it wasn't like this, but I need help. I need you to come with me." Inwardly, I don't think Magella is feeling very calm, but outwardly she meets the werewolf's eye steadily. She says, "You have the plague. You have Revenant." Yes, Abbie and I named the plague Revenant. Eldrin lowers her eyes and says, "Yes. So you understand I don't have much time." Magella nods slowly and says, "Your pack has Revenant as well." It's a guess, but it's a good guess. Eldrin nods. They're much sicker than I am. They were infected earlier than me. Magella keeps her face blank and says, "The course of infection is always the same, even if the duration of each stage varies. You know that. You know the febrile stage is coming for you, too. You probably also know that infection proceeds faster the more heavily you exert yourself. You've hastened yours along already, so instead of days, you could only have hours left." Eldrin grimaces and says, "Yes, I do know that. That's why I need you to get to my monastery. They'll all die without a healer. We'll all die." Magella frowns, face blank, mind working fast, too absorbed in processing what's happening to reply out loud. Eldrin shakes herself. She gestures impatiently. "Can you walk?" "No," Magella says. She doesn't volunteer an explanation of how she needs her crutch to support herself even on flat ground, and since she doesn't have it, trudging through the brambly forest understory is out of the question. Giving her captor the flat, one-word answer is plenty as far as she's concerned. Eldrin says, "I can't let you keep that," she adds, looking as sheepish as a werewolf can. Magella doesn't even need clarification, but Eldrin points at her sword anyway. Magella unbuckles her sword belt and reluctantly hands the weapon over to Eldrin. The Varu takes it and hangs the sword through her own belt. She doesn't hesitate after that. Eldrin picks Magella back up, since the scholar's weight feels like nothing to her anyway, pulls her into a piggyback position, and starts walking through the dense forest. Eldrin rolls to begin this journey, and that is a weak hit. She marks progress, but her already dangerously low supply ticks down by 1, and they reach a waypoint. It is 64 River Ford, and it is 43 defended. Defended by whom? Time for some world building with Abbie's help, putting together pieces we already have and adding more as needed. These woods fall within a snaking border region between the deep wilds, which are held by the Varu, and the havens, which are held by the folk. The control of this messy border region and the hinterlands, roughly above the deep wilds, is in constant flux, with different warlords vying for supremacy, pushing against each other's territories, and all wishing deep down they were big enough power players to seriously challenge the Varu or folk for access to either of the two bigger territories, which are rich with natural resources. Usually, the warlords rise and fall so quickly that neither of the older seats of power in the Ironlands, the Varu and the folk, can keep track of what's going on with them. But lately, a new power is rising in the hinterlands, and along the contested tract of territory down this way, which is getting large enough to draw attention. A warlord called the Lord of the Valley is gaining power, taking more and more territory, and has already caused the extinction of 2 minor races with his ascendancy, the Gnolls and the Snakefolk, crushing opposition as he expands his reach and influence. The Lord of the Valley is a hollow, a type of fey creature which is naturally immaterial, but can take possession of material things to build itself a body to suit its purposes and augment its ability to interact with the physical world. The Lord of the Valley has been quietly amassing followers, including other hollows as well as other kinds of fey, for reasons of his own, which aren't completely understood by outsiders, but are of immense interest to the Court of the Sun. They've always wanted to understand what is going on with the Fae, and it galls them how inscrutable they are, and what a paradox it remains what they could want. On a big picture level, the Lord of the Valley still doesn't have the power or presence to actually intimidate the folk or the Varu. But here in the woods, on a personal level, Eldrin and Magella feel a flash of dread when they see two of the stout, thrown together golems of rock and leaf litter that form the bodies of hollows. These little golems are defending a river ford, which crosses a tract of sparkling water with dense woods on both banks. Illidan eases Magella to her feet in some bushes and stares at the golems from cover 100 or so feet away. She says, "I had to cross the river on my way here, but I swam it at a placid stretch, avoiding this ford and the defenders. I don't think I can make that same swim again in my present condition, even if I didn't have to carry you. We need to fight over this crossing." Magella flinches when she hears Eldrin say that. "Is it wise to attack them if you're too weak to even swim? I doubt we could prevail against these two, and who knows what reinforcements they might drum up. We'd be making the rest of the journey under pursuit if we got away at all." Eldrin looks at her. "What do you suggest then? Do you prefer drowning in frigid water?" Magella chews her lip, then says, "What do Fae need with a river ford? This is the territory of a warlord, and presumably the only reason they care to control this crossing is to extort payment from travelers who need to use it. They wouldn't profit from meeting us with outright hostility. We should approach and ask what they want. We might avoid a fight altogether." Eldrin stares at Magella. Her head is spinning too much to decide if this sounds like an insane idea or a reasonable one. She finally shrugs, accepting that the scholar is the one who should ultimately decide about this anyway. Eldrin sighs. "You might need this," she says. She hands Magella's sword and belt back to her, and the scholar somberly returns the weapon to its place on her hip. Eldrin and Magella break cover, walking towards the golem at the near side of the river ford at a pace limited by Magella, who has found a crude walking stick she can lean on. The golem seems to be watching Eldrin and Magella draw closer, but it's hard to say, since the haphazard formation of rocks and plant matter has no eyes or face. Magella says, "Well met, my friend. What is the toll required by your exalted lord to use this crossing?" Magella rolls compel. She's making this move plus heart, because she's trying to calm, charm, pacify, barter, or convince. And that is a weak hit. In compel, that means they'll do what you want, or share what they know, but they ask something in return. Envision what they want. Ask the oracle if unsure. There are various oracles available in the Ironsworn rulebook, and they are essentially random tables we can roll on to get creative prompts when something in the story is uncertain. Different oracles are focused on different subjects to choose from depending on your need, like plot twists, actions taken in combat by non-player characters, yes and no with different likelihoods of either answer, etc. Here, we'll use the most open-ended possible oracle tables. Action and theme: 93, Journey, 84, Spirit, Journey spirit brings to mind a religious artifact. I don't know when else it would make sense to talk about a spirit taking a journey other than in the context of a magic or metaphysical something or other. So let's say that Moon Druid Order in the nearby monastery have in their possession a relic the Varu took from the Hollows long ago, and the Hollows want it back. We'll eventually think of a better name for the Moon Druid Order. As for the stolen relic, I doubt the reality of what happened is as clear-cut as all that, and there's probably a lot of disagreement about who rightfully owns the artifact or what it even does. As far as the Hollows are concerned, though, it's theirs, and the Varu are in the wrong for having it. There's probably an element of quick thinking and opportunism here on the part of the Hollows. They see a Varu wanting to use their river ford and think, how convenient, you want something we have, because you also have something we want. The nearer Hollow sketches this out to Magella and says, we'll let you both pass if you collect the artifact the wolves have stolen and return it to us. Magella glances at Eldrin, wordlessly asking if this deal is worth it because she doesn't know anything about the artifact or the situation other than what the Hollow just told her. Eldrin clenches her sharp teeth, staring at the Hollow in a way that would intimidate anyone strictly alive, but the golem doesn't even react. She grumbles, fine, I'll bring you the artifact after this is done. You have my word. The golem shakes his head. A wolf's word isn't worth the air it takes to say. It turns towards Magella. You swear it. Swear you will see this done. Remember, you need to cross these woods again if you want to get home. There will be consequences if you lie to us. Because she doesn't see any other thing to do, Magella swears. She reaches across her body and grips the pommel of her sword with one hand, drawing the blade from the scabbard just enough that she can gingerly close her other hand around the exposed blade, and swears. She makes the move, swear an iron vow, and we add, return the golem's relic to them, to her character sheet, and roll plus heart. That is a weak hit. We know a weak hit when swearing a vow means you are determined but begin your quest with more questions than answers. Fair enough. Magella slips her sword back into the scabbard and makes her face as blank as she can, hiding the fact that she doesn't really understand what she just agreed to do. The golem nods curtly. You may pass. Eldrin rolls her eyes. How sweet of you. Magella quietly hushes Eldrin without looking at her. This is going as well as they could hope, and she doesn't want to make waves before they're out of the golem's presence. They continue across the ford, which is visible as a dark mass under the clear water, with the current noticeably faster upstream and slower downstream from the major obstruction. Trudging onto the flat stones of the ford, Eldrin and Magella are only in shin-deep water. They can swish across in short order, getting to the far side of the river and proceeding under the gaze of the insectoid, multi-limbed golem standing guard there. They avoid looking at the golem, and it doesn't say anything to them as they proceed into the scrubby, dense woods. Once they're not being watched anymore, Eldrin picks Magella back up, and they continue on their way. Eldrin rolls again to continue the journey. A weak hit. More progress, and another waypoint reached, but also her supply ticks down by 1, bringing her to 0. I think since last episode we were viewing her dwindling supply as reflective of her deteriorating physical and mental condition as the journey went on. We can say this is it. She's overcome by her symptoms and can't go on any farther. But they did reach a waypoint. It is 1. A hideout, and 68. Blighted. They push through the understory into a small clearing showing some of the withered greenery and dead trees which Eldrin saw during her earlier passage this way. The oppressive darkness closes in. She cranes her neck, trying to look back at the scholar. The scholar's eyes widen. Eldrin feels a surge of fear, knowing from the scholar's expression that something about herself must look awful. She has just enough presence of mind to lower the scholar to the ground before dropping her. Her knees give out. She feels herself falling towards the dirt. Darkness swirls around her like inrushing water. She doesn't feel herself land. And we'll leave it at that cliffhanger. Thanks for listening to this episode of Virtual Muse AI RPG. Next time, we'll pick up the story of Eldrin and Majella right there. Until then.
Rusty boat, we're gonna take it tonight and cross this road.